Hi there, this is Mark Burnett with CubeBrush.com. In this chapter, we're going to be looking at how to paint and draw breasts. So this is one of the harder things in the female figure to get right, especially as a male artist, because it's not something that you'll see as often as your hands, for example, that are constantly in your field of vision. I mean, breasts might be if you're in a particular situation, I don't know, but most of the time, it's something that's hidden under clothes. And as especially as a male, you're not seeing it in the mirror every day, or when you take a shower. So it's something that's a little bit more foreign, so that it's not as easy to kind of recall in your memory as other things. So if you're a female, for example, if you're a woman, this might be a little bit easier for you. But regardless, it's a complex shape, and it's often messed up. So I wanted to take an entire chapter to cover this topic and actually, give you a proper rundown on how this should actually be drawn. So I'm gonna get right into it. So we're gonna go and sort of simplify our torso. So we're gonna have this is gonna be our torso, so the rib cage, and then we're gonna see how the breast attached to it in a very, very simplistic way, and then we're gonna sort of add a little bit more details and add more details. So basically do what we've been doing so far. So start simple and then add levels of complexity on top of that. So the basic shape of breasts laying, basically hanging. So if the person is standing up, it's going to be not circles. So it's not going to be like this. Those would be probably fake. If you have real breasts hanging from from a standing position, it kind of looks like teardrops. So you can imagine a teardrop that looks kind of like this, and that's actually pretty accurate. So if you kind of angle them a little bit, so it's not going to be straight down like this, but it's going to be angled a little bit, so kind of like this instead. And then you do the same thing on the other side. So you can also imagine that if you want to simplify it or stylize it a little bit more, it's kind of like an inverted heart. So if you take it a little bit further, maybe you have the neck right here. So you start from the neck, and then you draw this big heart shape, kind of like this, and that would give you pretty good shape for your breasts. But in our case, what we're going to do is consider them teardrops, because they're going to interact with the muscles underneath, and it's just a little bit easier to understand how they behave when you consider them as each their own individual thing, as opposed to one big mass. So this is the the simplistic way to represent them. And then you'll have obviously the nipple that's somewhere on here, so it's not up here. It depends, right? It's in this area generally, so it might be down here, or it might be up here, or up here even. It depends on the person, so there's all kinds. I'm sure everybody's aware. So now what we're going to be doing is actually placing this on an actual body. So I'm going to take the one that we've been working on from the beginning here. So I'm going to take this lady here, push her down there, and we're going to fix that. So we can't actually erase what she's got already, because we're going to be replacing it. Okay, so now she's got nothing, and this is generally the way I will approach painting breasts whenever I do it. I'd rather have nothing first, so kind of like a blank canvas, and then you can add them on top. I've seen a lot of people do kind of try to add them at the very beginning, or add them kind of throughout, and it makes it a lot harder to understand the volumes for the body, because if we draw the rib cage, so basically it goes like this, and then you have the center here, and if the lighting was from the top, so you would have kind of light hitting the shoulders like here, and then hitting The collarbone. And the other side, the same thing. And then the trapezius, a little bit, like this. And then you would have a change of plane right here. So from when the shoulder kind of cuts into the rib cage, you have a change of plane that is kind of like that. So now that we have this kind of blank canvas to work with, now we can kind of add the teardrops that we've been talking about. So the teardrops, they start, if we draw our pectoral muscles really softly so that we can kind of erase them as we go. So you would have the pectoral muscles like this, and then the teardrops pretty much start like at the halfway point. So you take the full height and you go about the halfway point here, and this is where the breast is going to start, and then you can go, you know, as low as as low as basically her knees. But generally speaking, you know, you'll want to have it go just a little bit under the pectoral muscles, or, you know, maybe all the way down to her mid torso down here. So let's go for sort of mid-size ones. And what we're going to do is we start with the teardrop here, and then remember it's angled. So we go like this, a nice teardrop. Alright, so something like this, and obviously you want to make sure they're both the same size. Otherwise that's not going to look right. Okay, and then so that would be a good position. So now we can start to sort of erase the stuff that's not needed. So we don't want, you know, the outlines at the top here, because that's not what it should look like. So we can start to fade those out a little bit like this. And then what happens, you know, in this area here, so how this part here ends, where it ends, so it, you know, doesn't go like this, it doesn't go like this. It kind of connects to it kind of, you know, that line here, like the breast line, the outer side here, kind of bleeds into the pectoral muscle. So you have something like this, you know. So that's why we drew the pectoral muscles in the first place, because we have now a line to kind of make them connect. So it would be kind of like that. We zoom in a little bit more. And then I'm going to clean this up. Alright, and that would be it. So, you know, those would be very average ones, I would say. And then we can shade them as if they were pretty much balls. So, you know, as we've seen previously, shading a ball, very simple. It makes it something that anybody can really do. You know, there we go. That's how you shade a ball. That's done. So depending on where the light source is, if it's from the top, then your ball is going to be shaded like this. If it's from the bottom, it's going to be shaded like this. From the side, you know, you get the idea. So in this case, as we mentioned here, since we can see the kind of highlights here on the shoulders, you know, our lighting is coming from the top. So we're going to have light hitting here, like the top of the ball. So something like this. And then we can add also the shadows at the bottom. So now we're starting to get this volume a little bit better. And then we can draw the nipple about here. But as I mentioned, this is really up to you. It can be many places. Well, not many places, but it can be, you know, it can vary wildly. And there we go. So in between here, they don't quite connect because, you know, they're not too big. And there we go. So you have something like this. maybe add a little bit of shadow here to emphasize the teardrop shape. So that would be, you know, how you do it basically. So now we know the basics, and of course, you know, I've only shaded this area here, so you know, this is why it's a little bit too bright right now. So, you know, if I wanted to do the same thing, I would have to, you know, add a highlight to the rest of the body. But we're not going to do that. We're going to do that in the next chapter. So in the next chapter, we're going to be looking at drawing an entire figure with colors and, you know, sort of applying everything that we've learned so far. So right now what we're going to be looking at is different angles and different sizes now. So we know the basics of how it's created. We know the basic shape and how it's shaded. And now let's push it a little bit, because this is one of those things that can change in sizes a lot compared to, you know, arms, for example. So your arms always going to be pretty similar, but, you know, breasts, they can change pretty dramatically from one person to another. So the first thing first, we're going to be looking at it from the side view, because that's also important. So from the side view, let's say I have a torso like this. I'm going to do the same thing, draw a torso, and then abdomen, and then we're going to have so kind of like the rib cage going like this, and then the stomach digs in a little bit, pokes out again. Then you want to have the hips right here. And then back, then this angle that we've seen in the previous chapter, then leads into the butt cheeks. All right. Gonna add a little bit of shading to that to detach it from the background a little bit more. Okay, now we have a nice profile. The belly button would be something like here. All right. So from the side view, you would have something like, you know, this would be kind of like the hole where the arm would attach. So we can mark that as, you know, just a hole. And then we have the pectoral muscle that goes like this and then goes down and then connects in the front with the other side. And then we have the abs here like this, all the way down, right? But we don't need the abs. All we need is the pectoral muscles to know kind of where to start the teardrop. So as we mentioned, kind of the halfway point. So it's gonna start right here. And then from the side view, it's gonna be pretty similar, except you can imagine like the teardrop is kind of dropping against the surface, so it's not going to be like this. You know, if there's a flat surface, the teardrop is going to be more like this, right? So, you know, going down like this. And this is exactly the shape of the breast that we want to be looking at. So I'm going to do this here. So it starts here, it begins here, and then you have kind of the shape like this. So nice, smooth teardrop to begin. And then as we remember, that curve here, that comes back up right here, connects to the pectoral muscle. So in here, so one bleeds into another one, kind of like that. And then we can fill this up. Like this, and then the teardrop suggests it's coming back, you know, towards the center, and so we would have something like that. So from the side view, and of course we don't want to forget the nipple, and the nipple will be kind of like at the, you know, the front here. So basically you want it most of the time facing forward, so it would be right here, as you can see. Or you can have it lower, you know, any place you want, basically in this area would be fine. So I'm gonna have perky ones, and you're gonna be looking like that. So that would be what a breast looks like from the side. So we're gonna shade that also to make sure we understand the volumes properly. So the rib cage, this. And then we have, as we mentioned, kind of like spheres that we want to shade, that we want to keep in mind for the breast shape, breast volumes. Something like this. Then light at the top, because our light source is coming from the top. And then that would be it. So this is what it would look like from from the side view. So now that we have a nice sphere, now we can dig in here a little bit like we did from the front to emphasize again that teardrop. It's very, very subtle. I don't want this to be too harsh. It's to be super subtle. And then here we go. So that is what it would look like from the side. So of course this looks a little bit strange here without the arm, but you can imagine the arm would kind of overlap like this. So this would be the shoulder right here. So let's draw it real quick just so that. So of course, if you're doing these exact steps and it doesn't look right, then maybe the rib cage was a little bit too big. So that's why I'm correcting it a little bit. It wasn't perfect, so I had some changes to make. So yeah, it would be something like that. So again, from the side view, kind of like a teardrop like this. So pretty simple shape. And then from the front, same deal, but at an angle. All right, now let's look at different sizes. So for this, it's a little bit easier from the front. The side view is going to be the same deal. So all you have to do is just make that teardrop a lot bigger. So if we start like this and we want like something massive, something like ridiculously big, maybe goes all the way down here. So there you go. So from the side view, pretty simple. And then we're going to do the same thing with the front here. So we're going to modify this one. Okay, now doing the front view, let's say we make those really, really big. Making breasts bigger is not as easy as it might sound. So what we're going to start with here is the same kind of deal we had before. So we take the same teardrops shape that we had. And what's not going to change is the starting points right here of those teardrops. So this is always going to be the same thing. So it grows, it doesn't grow higher or anything like that, unless unless she gets implants or something like this, and then it actually deforms kind of like the real anatomy. But generally, it'll only grow down from there, and it doesn't quite grow, in a nice scalable way. So it's not quite like this. So you can't just make the teardrop bigger like this. Instead, it kind of goes a little bit to the side a little bit more. So it'll grow sideways like this. And then of course, lower also. But basically in the end, if you have something really, really big, what you'll have is that you'll have kind of like two big ovals, kind of like this. So I'm gonna grow those teardrops, to the side a little bit more. So pushing them on the side a little bit more. And then of course you want to grow, towards the center here also. But you'll see the teardrop shape deform a little bit. So they're kind of, let's say the teardrop was like this. Now as it grows, it kind of starts to tilt like this. So you can kind of see the difference. It's subtle, but there's still a difference. So keep that in mind when you're, drawing really big breast. if you draw a really big breast, and of course make sure that they're always symmetrical. Otherwise, it looks a little bit strange, especially from the front view. All right, and now that we're done with that, now we can start shading it again. So maybe we could have went even bigger just for the sake of this example, but you get the idea. So all you have to do now is just scale this up even more if you wanted that. But so now we're gonna add the shading at the bottom here, and then add the highlights coming from the top, so we can fade those lines again. Then one thing to know also is that the unless she's getting fake breast implants, the nipple will tend to shift down a little bit, as opposed to if she had really small breasts. So it might land kind of more like this instead. So the bigger they are, basically, it's just the harsher the lighting is going to be on them, because they create more shadows and they catch more highlights, basically just because of their sizes. So what I like to do when I do the highlights for this is I take the point where the nipple is and kind of adjust the lighting based on that. So we're gonna have nipples kind of be right there, and then it goes like you take the point here, and then you kind of do the shading, starting from that point here. So the nipple is gonna catch a little bit more of the highlights, and then when it joins in the center, we can have our line like this. And then when there's a change of plane, so right here, we have kind of like the two big balloons connecting, the two big spheres connecting to the kind of like the flat surface of the torso or the rib cage. That creates a change of plane, and then that means that you'll see that change here. So it goes from being round to being flat. Oops. So that's how we draw. That's how we emphasize that change of plane. So yeah, so it would look something like this. So of course, you can spend a little bit more time to just make sure everything looks nice and smooth. And this is what it would look like if she was naked. Often when you draw a character, that's not the case. So the character is not going to be naked. She's going to be wearing some kind of clothes and probably a bra. And what happens then is that the shape changes a little bit, because the bra just kind of pushes the two breasts together. So you'll have, they'll be pushed toward the center like this, closer together, meaning that this line here is going to get a little bit more intense. So the change of plane, instead of being like kind of like the smooth change like this, maybe it will become more like this, something a little bit more intense. So it means that you're going to be catching a little bit more, a little bit less light in the center here. There's going to be a little bit more shadow, and the connection point is going to be a little bit bigger. So what we're going to do is kind of push those together. So imagine that she's wearing a bra, and the bra generally will try to push the breast in so that it fits within the silhouette if she didn't have any breasts. So it would be kind of like the silhouette of the rib cage, and past that a little bit if the breasts are really big. So you can imagine this is kind of like the line that you want to make them fit within the container, and it might go a little bit past that, but not so much. So what we're gonna do is change our line so that it gets a little bit closer. And then when you have a bra, the shape changes from a teardrop to more like a ball, like a balloon instead, because it's artificially being pushed together. So what we're gonna do is just change that shape so that's closer together, kind of like more like a circle, like a sphere. see what that looks like. So you can erase, you know, all the detail here and turn it back into a sphere so that it's easier to shade. So real quick, you know, what I'm trying to do here, let's say you have, you know, two volumes that are like this. Then you push them together, you would kind of get, you know, this thing here. If they're being pushed together, like this. So this is kind of what we're trying to this is kind of what we're trying to draw here. So we'll have this flat line here. Okay, now we're going to be adding the shading back in. So, as I mentioned, emphasize the shape of the ball, meaning that all the lines, all the outlines of the breast are going to be a little bit more intense when they're pushed together. And fix the highlights like this. Emphasize also the change of plane, so all the contrasts are going to be a little bit higher, basically. So you would have something like this. So I'm going to emphasize the change of plane on this one breast, on this one side. Try to get rid of that black. Soften everything. And there we go. So when you have, you know, a bra like this, when it pushes the breast together, you're not going to see the nipple so much because they're most likely going to be hidden underneath. So something like here. So yeah, it deforms into more of a the shape of a ball. And then you can erase the side here. And that's kind of what it would look like. So there you have it, both next to each other. So pressed together with a bra, something that you're probably going to see most of the time, and then without. So this is more like a natural version. So as you can see, if we simplify everything to their simplest shape, and it makes everything easier when it comes to, you know, drawing them and then shading them. So while it is a difficult part of the body to draw properly, you know, if we approach it this way, it should make the process a lot easier. So for the next chapter, I'm going to be doing an entire character in an interesting pose from start to finish. Let's get to it.